This is RBN, the Republic Broadcasting Network.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Friday, December 6th, 2019. We're a week away from Friday the 13th. We'll be talking about that a little bit more in the rest of the show here. And, of course, tomorrow is Pearl Harbor Day. And one of the things that I'm not going to miss is the flying of the jets right over our home on their way to the Pearl Harbor festivities, which they did every year. And those jets are loud here. Okay, so we've got a lot to talk about. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. In our third hour, we're going to have a guest, Mitchell Henderson. He's the author of the book, A Man Beyond His Mission, an insider secret history of the decay of American society, military, and law enforcement. And that sounds like a real mouthful, but you know, if you're trying to take a holistic approach to what's going on with the United States right now, you can understand why it would sort of drag everything else in on it. So Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and opinions. And we are going back to enforcing the one call per caller per day rule, because yesterday got a little out of control with people calling in, wanting to respond to each other. And part of me was just tempted to throw open the phone lines and go watch a movie or something and let the listeners scream at each other, but that would make for bad radio. So just if you're going to call into the show, just decide what you're going to say ahead of time. Say it as briefly and clearly as you can. And not ramble on and lose focus, which happened to some of our callers yesterday. And then hang up and understand that if somebody calls in later to respond to you, that you're going to have to wait until Monday to respond back to them. So we're going back to enforcing the rules. I'm the Führer of this program, and we're going to go back to the one call per caller per day rule. So mahi dictum est, and getting on into the news here. We have been seeing all these reports that are out there speculating that Inspector General Horowitz's report is basically going to exonerate all the players and let them all go here. But Greg Jarrett is out there saying that reports downplaying the Horowitz and Durham reports on the Russian probe are multiple hearsay and unreliable, and it may be just a propaganda stunt to get people to just not pay attention when these reports come on out, because apparently Horowitz has got something like over 100 criminal inquiries out against members of the FBI who were involved on this. So we have to be very, very careful about what we're seeing out there, and trust nobody, trust nothing that you read or see, especially on the corporate media. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Jim in New York. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Mike. You know, yesterday you had a caller from Tennessee, and he was talking about the problem of black crime. And, you know, we can never have an honest discussion on race. You know, we live in a bizarre country where saying a, quote, racist or prejudiced thing is worse than drone attacking a wedding party, killing Middle Easterners. So I find that very bizarre that we can't have an honest discussion. Now, you know, there has been, and, you know, I know most black people are good people, but there's been a criminal element within the black community that has been committing vicious crimes for 60 years. And to point that out, I don't think is a bad thing. It's just being honest. And I remember like 6 months ago, The caller from Tennessee mentioned people self-segregating. I don't think that's freedom. I think people should be free to associate with whoever they want. And you had this caller, I think his name was Todd. He was complaining, saying, oh, you have to check him. You don't have to check anybody. Freedom means freedom of speech. You're not responsible for what people say on your show. What do you think?
Well, it's kind of a thin line to be walking along in that I want to give everybody their First Amendment right and voice, but as sort of the ringmaster of this circus here, I do have to impose some limits here. And one of the limits are, as I said before, we're going back to the one call per caller per day rule. And I really want to tamp down on people who are espousing very broad brush generalizations about groups of people rather than talk about specific individuals or organizations that are engaged in criminal activity. So, I'm trying to find a balance point between the two.
Yes, I understand that. But this person, Todd, was saying that you have to check people. You don't have to check people. I mean, I don't see why you're not responsible for someone's opinion. And, the problem is not a Joe or anyone saying something. The problem's Todd. 'Cause Todd wanted to turn the show into NBC, where you're not allowed to have an honest discussion
Yes.
on race. And that's the problem. NBC, I think Todd should go watch NBC, not be dictating to Joe or other people who are trying to have an honest discussion. And it's sad, but there has been, unfortunately, a crime problem within the black community. And, to talk about it, even Jesse Jackson said that he was walking down the street and he was relieved that they were white people behind him. And he said that. But I think that's the problem. TV news
Yes.
will never have an honest discussion on race. But you're not responsible for what people say. It's not your fault. Let them talk. Let them give their opinion, even if it's, quote, racist or prejudice. That's not your fault.
Well, I'm trying to
No.
basically keep the show as linked to reality as possible. And sometimes some of the callers, they're going off into la la land and they're making absolutely unsupportable statements. And so part of my function as editor, if you will, is to try and basically keep the discussion real and practical and not let it descend into all kinds of hype and screeching and screaming about various topics.
Yes, I understand. But people have their opinions. It's just sad, It's like they make a big TV propaganda. They'll talk all day about some guy who said a, quote, prejudice thing. And meanwhile, killing civilians in the Middle East, that's fine. What a bizarre country we live in.
Yes.
It's okay to murder brown people, mainly, in the Middle East. Another thing, every group or ethnic group has their criminal element, if you will. Italians have their mafia. And I hear a lot of talk about the Jews. Well, living in the New York area, I've grown up and lived with Jews. And your ordinary Jew, they're the salt of the earth. They're the nicest people you could have. They'll give their shirt off their back to you. So the Jews, it's really just an elite criminal element within the Jewish community, just like as the Italian community, the black community. Elite group of Jews that are doing so much destruction to the country. But your ordinary Jew, who I come in contact with every day, they're the nicest people imaginable. They'll give the shirt off your back. Great people. It's just a shame that they have an element, a criminal element, an elite element that is committing.
Well, what makes it worse is that elite criminal element hides behind the ordinary Jewish people. Because that's the whole point of screaming anti-Semite and Jew hate, is to try and say, well, we're all collectively Jewish people, and when you criticize one of us, you're criticizing all of us. And that's absolutely not true. We're criticizing certain individuals like Netanyahu, who deserves to be criticized. And Netanyahu is basically hiding behind all the world's Jewish people to say, no, you can't criticize me because you're being an anti-Semite and a racist. And it's just a trick. In fact, over in Democracy Now! A while back, they had a guest who was a former member of the Knesset who just said right during the interview that screaming anti-Semite is just a trick to get the opposition to shut up and stop asking embarrassing questions.
Yes. But there is an elite element in the Jewish community, which is probably less than 5%, who has extreme power in this country. Enormous power.
Yes.
Your ordinary Jew, oh boy, they're the nicest people in the world. And I feel kind of guilty about, that their criminal element within them is causing so much problems, and people are taking it out on quote Jews as a group, because they're very nice people.
Well, again,
have a better friend.
That's a policy that comes right down from Israel's government, to blur that line between the malefactors and the Jewish people as a whole, in order to use them as a shield. The problem being, of course, that this actually makes the world a much more dangerous place for the ordinary salt of the earth Jew. Because, when the backlash does happen, as it always has throughout history for the last 2,000 years, they'll push too far and grab too much, and there's a backlash, and people get caught in the backlash who had absolutely nothing to do with the abuse.
Yes, it is sad. And but again, I just remind you, I love your show, but you're not responsible to quote check someone. It's their opinion, and you just respectfully say, well, Jim, I disagree with you on that. But you're not responsible for what people say. On that note, thanks for taking my call, and have a great show, Mike.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We certainly plan to hear. Getting back over to the impeachment issue, if you really think about it, it has reached the height of absurdity, because Nancy Pelosi has now announced that Democrats will move ahead on impeachment for President Trump for not giving away U.S. taxpayer dollars quick enough to one of the world's most corrupt nations. And Democrats believe this is grounds for impeachment. Now, earlier this week, Rudy Giuliani met with Ukrainian officials to discuss the misuse of U.S. funds in Ukraine and the creation of a group to fight corruption in the country, and basically found that some $5.3 billion, with a B, of U.S. aid just sort of kind of disappeared into the corruption of Ukraine. And so, Trump is right to be cautious. Is the U.S. taxpayer money being well spent, or is it just being wasted? And so it's kind of ironic that Pelosi is trying to impeach Donald Trump for not being fiscally responsible with the U.S. aid to Ukraine. Anyway, to sort of make up for that little gaffe, the Pentagon has announced a new $250 million Ukraine military aid package months ahead of expectations. And of course, the announcement comes amid this whole impeachment inquiry into President Trump for withholding some of this year's aid to the country. Now, remember, it came out that at the time Trump made his little phone call to the president of Ukraine, they were unaware the money was being held up. And the reason it was being held up was that other countries that had promised, other countries who had promised to come on in to Ukraine's assistance weren't showing up. They weren't writing those checks. And Trump has demonstrated a policy of not wanting the U.S. to go it alone. Certainly that's the message that he's given to NATO. You know, you will pay your share for all of this warmongering that's going on here. All right, we're going to take another phone call. Tony in Puerto Rico. Aloha, Tony. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. I hope you're keeping warm. Yeah, listen, Mike, remember all those put options that people made, individuals or corporations made during 9/11? I have a question. Does that have a statute of limitations, or is it still being investigated?
There's no, if the case is declared active, statute of limitations doesn't apply. The statute of limitations comes into effect for crimes committed, but which do not have an active case file on them.
Okay, so it's still out there, still being investigated, and those billions are still out there.
If you're talking about the money that vanished from the basement of the World Trade Center, nobody knows where that went. There was, of course, that massive computer transfer from the financial computers in one of the two towers, where they basically got robbed electronically just moments before the aircraft impact. And they were saying, well, we'll never be able to find out who did this because the computer drives were destroyed. Then there was this company in Europe that said, no, we can recover the data from those disk drives. We have a new process we've pioneered, and we can read those disks here. And they started to work on the disks, and then some unknown entity came on in, bought up the entire company, and the disk reconstruction was basically shelved permanently.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mike. Have a nice weekend.
All right. Same to you. And let's go to Steve Elkins. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, you had a caller from New York. They're talking about an honest discussion on race relations, and I agree. And you're never going to get that. But I just want to mention the repackaging of the old product, the old agenda, to the current times here. Now, I'm going to bring back a word we probably haven't heard in a long time, because they found out later on it was reverse discrimination, and that would be affirmative action. So we had affirmative action, we had quotas. It was finally outed as being reverse discrimination, and what it is, it certainly is. So they repackage it as diversity, and then bring us the new package now, and it's the same thing as the old product. It's affirmative action, but now we call it diversity, and then, of course, you don't go along with that. Then there's a label applied to you, a stigma applied to you that you are discriminating. You know, we must have diversity as if diversity really is a strength. And at the tipping point, I'm going to say even beyond that, the 50% mark, it is actually a liability. And I can tell you firsthand in a hospital, working in a hospital, communication is essential. Be able to talk to people and understand what's going on, what their needs are. And they talk about diversity. Well, we had to hire so many people, linguistics here, to speaking Spanish, to be able to communicate.
Okay,
So
Steve.
language is very important.
Steve, we had to take a break here. Stay on the line. I want to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge 20, 30, 40, 50, if possible, 100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight. Women.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Steve Elkins about affirmative action, and it's being repackaged now as diversity. And diversity, of course, is touted as a positive thing, but it doesn't always work that way. And you were telling us a story about this hospital where you were working.
Yeah. Well, communication is essential in many industries, especially in healthcare. And you get a clientele who doesn't speak any English whatsoever. And of course, you have to call for a translator, and they really don't have that many in a hospital, depending how big your hospital is. I mean, you could have several people coming at the same time. You're saying, I can't communicate with them. They actually tried to insist or push us into classes to learn Spanish. And I said, I don't have a problem. I could learn Spanish. But the point being is, what's the incentive for people who come here and to learn our language? This is America. I had no problem people keeping their language. My mother speaks fluent German. I was born in Germany. So German in my house, fine. Outside this house, we speak English, and that's the way it should be. And nobody's trying to erase anybody's language or anything like that. But I do believe when you come here, you have to assimilate and become an American. But that's quite a liability on my part, is that I've got to try to figure out what's going on there, what's wrong. It may be problems with allergies to medications. I have no clue. Past medical history, so I got to call for somebody. And time is wasted, and that's time I need to maybe fix an emergency or situation. So this whole, like I said, this diversity thing here, this affirmative actions and quotas was all repackaged as diversity, and you must comply with the new legislation, and that's all it is. It's affirmative action, and it's actually all basically, essentially, it is anti-white.
Yes.
It is anti-white. Diversity is anti-white. It is definitely pointed at eliminating your chances and your possibilities of gaining employment. And it is a bad thing. It is a bad thing. So I just want to bring that attention to just that it's been repackaged. That's it. Just been repackaged. Affirmative actions and quotas has been repackaged. It is diversity, and it is a killer.
Well, part of the problem here is the nation was founded on this idea that all men and women are created equal, which is good politics but bad science. The reality is that there are people who have different gifts and different strengths, as it were. And as a result of that, Congress discovered that it was far easier to legislate equality of outcome rather than to guarantee equality of opportunity, especially when it came to education. And I learned this early on, many years ago, when I was still in Southern California. I did one semester teaching a remedial math class, and the fact of the matter is most of those kids didn't want to learn math. They were playing around looking for ways to lock up the mechanical calculators, and other than that, they just weren't interested. And I tried to devote my time to those kids who were interested and wanted to learn mathematics. And I got called on it by the school administration saying, no, you just make sure that all of those kids leave that class with exactly the same mathematical skills. And if that means you've got to pull the top down rather than the bottom up, that's what you do, because that's what is politically expedient.
As well, essentially, it sounds like you had Common Core back then. You had a Common Core philosophy there.
Well, we had the philosophy, but this was way before Common Core came along.
Right.
And of course, my experience with Common Core, when we lived in Hawaii, we had a neighbor who worked for Peterson, who publishes all the textbooks used by Common Core. And she wasn't supposed to let us see any of that information, but she did share it with us. And, it was through her that we learned. Parents were discouraged from, asking what was the core belief system of Common Core. We saw how they were handling math, and it was almost designed to mentally cripple students, to make it almost impossible for them to solve even the most basic math problems. And they had this weird little setup of putting boxes around numbers and adding and subtracting, and that's a far cry from when I was in school, where you literally memorized your multiplication tables out to 10 times 10. And you were very fast as doing that. And now, of course, we've lost that. We've lost that edge. Chinese students are now 4 grade levels ahead of the same age children here in the United States of America.
Yeah, I saw that. Mike, is there a face that goes along with who created the Common Core? Is there anybody taking credit, or maybe they're not taking credit now because it's been passed over, but is there anybody that actually had taken claim to creating this whole process?
Not that I'm aware of. It really came out of the Peterson Publishing Company, and it was just a way of telling, forcing schools to buy new textbooks. Anyway, Steve, gotta let you go. We've got more callers waiting on the line, and we'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Hey, honey, I'm home. I grabbed a newspaper on the way home. Look at all the news today.
Don't you know that all you're going to get in the newspaper is propaganda, twisted news, and false information?
Honey, this is a national newspaper. It has to be true.
Ha! For some reason, the majority of the population believe anything the mainstream media tells them. The newspaper doesn't give out the important attention of what's happening to this country and news that affects our daily lives. Say, does that newspaper mention anything about the North American Union?
No, not that I can see.
I didn't think so. You need to go to www.newswithviews.com, where truth is more important than political correctness. That's www.newswithviews.com. Hey, don't throw that away. We can use that in the birdcage.
Okay, move over. Let me start reading newswithviews.com.
The truth? Read all about it at newswithviews.com. Newswithviews.com, where reality shatters illusion.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you some from Amazon.com. This product is superb. I have been taking it for about a year now, and I can feel my cardiovascular system run like a Swiss watch. I definitely recommend this product for anyone that has high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and heart palpitations, A+. It's potent, but it works. I have been waking up for the past 3 years with numb hands, and a week into using Extendivite, my numb hands seem to have cleared up. My circulation was off, and now it's back on track. So I'm happy. I feel so energized, and I have my husband on it now. My mother-in-law has cholesterol problems, so I bought her a bottle as well. Thank you so much. Love the product. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
What this country is coming to, I sure would like to know. If they don't do something by and by, the rich will live and the poor will die. Doggone, the panic is on. Can't get no way, can't draw no pay.
And Aloha America, welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I just wanted to follow up on a call by Steve Elkins and just say something about it. I'm sure, as most of the people know, and I know you know, my wife is African American. My daughter is mixed. I've been an HR director, and I want to. So I've been in charge of hiring for Fortune 500, several Fortune 500 companies.
Yes.
And I've also commanded military units that were diverse. And one of the things I want to say for the first off is I believe that it's got to be achievement. Totally, just simply meritocracy is as close to pure as you can get. That's what I believe. Agree. My daughter, who is an honor student, never got a B, maxed out all her tests and all that stuff, real good private school. Of course, she could be classified as an African American, so she's subject to affirmative action. And I'll I'll freely admit that when it comes to my daughter, the laws are there and I'll use them if it will get her ahead. But I don't believe they should be there. And it bothers me that things are available to her that are not available to my sister and my brother's side of their children. And it is bothersome. But I will tell you that diversity has been sold as a religion for the last 20 years or so. It's not even, it's a religion. It's embedded in everything. It's the popular culture, just, it hammers on it again and again. And I would tell you that as a military officer, that diversity is not a great thing. You ask the Austro-Hungarian army, or an army that can't communicate with its, because they speak Spanish or what have you, or whatever it might be. And unity, diversity is great, but in a nation, unity is more important than diversity. It's nice that if unity can accept diversity and diversity can operate under the rubric of unity. But if it's diversity and only divisive, it's really bad. I can also tell you from a corporate point of view that it is indeed nothing has changed. You still have to turn in your equal employment opportunity EEOC reports. Any company over 25 people has to do that. And if you're not, quote, reflective of the population around you, you can be dinged if you get on the radar of the feds. And it doesn't always mean, by the way, that the people around you are the most qualified. And you still have to make a profit. You still have to, push the product through and perform. And sometimes, you know what? When you're living when your population surrounding your business is in basically a slum or area, you're not getting the best product there. So it's also interesting to see how that has affected, for instance, the Asians. And by the way, being absolutely almost pure has not hurt the Japanese. They're not diverse at all, and they perform just fabulously, right?
Yes.
But at Harvard, where there was recently a lawsuit where they've been admitting people and dinging basically white people. By the way, the white quotas were taken up mostly by Jews. Where in this case, where they wanted to bill themselves as white. And it was advantageous for them to do so, but nevertheless, the quota is paid a hell of a price, and the Asians sued. The Asians, if they went by test scores and GPAs, the Asians would have been way over, more represented than they are. They're the ones that got hurt. Same thing at UCLA out here, and a whole bunch of other schools, I personally believe that if it's going to be majority Asian at Harvard or UCLA, well, let it be and let everybody know what they have to work for to get in. That's just raising the bar, and everybody's got to come up to it. But it's an interesting thing, and I think it's really to the detriment at this point of our country that we're doing all this. So
I would agree, and we can thank the liberal Democrats for lowering that bar and basically saying, anybody can get through now. You just have to be one of the protected groups, Black, Hispanic, gay, whatever, and you'll coast right on. That's why Elizabeth Warren claimed to be Native American to get into her college. And
and it's been sold, Mike, just like everything else, like giving away benefits, basically, to get the illegal aliens to come here. The Democrats have given away that to cement, their political bloc, their rainbow quote coalition or whatever you want to call it. And now they can't turn the clock back, and they can't go backwards. But it is definitely discriminatory against whites, certainly get Asians, who are, by the way, you can discern them as being different from you and I by their looks as you can a black person from you and I. And, so they've been subject to discrimination in their life too. But because they're achievers, because they work, they're operative, They're honorary whites, and it works against them.
Yeah, it does. I remember
during
the Los Angeles riots following the verdict on the Rodney King trial, and down in South Central, the very first targets of the rioting people were all these Asian-owned convenience stores. Because up until that point, the blacks had been saying, we're in an economically deprived area, there's no opportunity here. And then the Koreans and Asians, Chinese came on in, and they started, taking over the convenience stores. And they worked hard. They worked lots of hours during the day, and they prospered. And it sort of pulled the rug out from under the excuses that were being made by politicians saying, yes, you're in an economically deprived area, it's the fault of the white man, and we're going to make things better for you. And so when the rioting started, those convenience stores were the first to go, the first to get burned up.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the number on that, Mike, was about 2,500 Asian businesses got burned to the ground, and they were burned to the ground because they were Asian, and they were burned to the ground primarily by black mobs, and yet because they would not define that as a hate crime. How about that? 2,500 businesses burned to the ground because of their ethnic identity, and that was not a hate crime because another minority did it. But if I have one more quick story to tell you, I can't tell you the name of the company, but I was a director of human resources for a company that in the aftermath of that riot and we lost some stores. This is a retail store. Lost some stores that were burned out in South Central. We lost like 3 stores, but when the real estate market went down and the interest rates went down in the mid-'90s, we decided, well, it's a good chance to expand. And so we're going to build out 7 new stores in addition to the 3 which we rebuilt in South Central. So we met with all these people, including Maxine Waters and all that stuff, and met with her and met with all sorts of the local politicos. And you'd think it would be nice that when you put in each of these stores would hire about 60 people to staff them. But all at once, you're putting in 600, jobs in a depressed area. You'd think that would be really welcome. Well, we went to this one who I know you'll know the name of this guy. I'm not going to say it, but I know I'll tell you off the air if you want to know it. To get some political backing, the guy was on the city council at the time, black guy, and put out our plans and wanted to help with all the help from the political arena that we could get. And he put up his hand and he said $20,000. And we went, what? And I was with the VP of the whole corporation, and we were going, what? And he goes, yeah, give me a check for $20,000 before we do anything. It's a freaking city councilman, man. This is in the mid-'90s, and his constituents were begging for jobs, and we were willing to give them to him. So, anyways, it's a ridiculous situation. But I'll tell you another thing: I would never go into combat with a bunch of people I couldn't communicate with, and maybe had a loyalty to a different country. So, diversity in that case it's not a strength. Unity is a bigger strength than diversity.
Well, during the battle for Britain, the air war, there were Polish units, pilots, flight crews that were fighting right alongside the Brits. And even though they spoke English, when the situation got very tense, they would revert back to speaking Polish, on the radio and jamming up the channels. And, nobody could understand what they were saying. And it was definitely a liability. And, at least some pilots on both British and Polish were lost because they weren't able to understand. They were being warned that there was a German fighter on their tail.
Here's one that a lot of people don't know, but a lot of people might. And back in World War II, there was a regiment of Nisei soldiers called the 442nd Regimental Combat Team that fought in Italy and France. And the 442nd was made up all of Nisei, largely they had to volunteer since they weren't drafting them since they were in concentration camps back in the United States with their families. Mm-hmm. But they wanted to prove themselves. And and they had a chip on their shoulder. And by the way, the small unit identity, when you can't go home, if you don't come up to it, if you let your buddy down, and he lives down the block, and you might be married to your sister or whatever, you don't let that guy down no matter what. You know, you hang tough with these guys no matter what. Well, that's what the 442nd did, and they were the most decorated regimental size unit in the history of the United States Army in World War II. So they were officered by whites, but of course they could have officered themselves for the most part. What's his name? Anyway, was a 442nd guy before he.
Yes.
Decorated 442nd guy.
Well,
but at any rate,
he was awarded the CMH a little late, but there were. I remember the parade they held for him, where he got the CMH along with 8 other residents of Oahu, and they threw a big parade for him and rode him down the street in a military tracked vehicle, and everybody cheered, not knowing that there was a dark side to Inouye's history. There was a reason he was called the One-Armed Bandit.
Yeah, and they were an absolute kick-ass unit. Now, if I can make one more point, because I know I'm taking up a lot of time.
Yes.
That there have been more recipients of the Congressional Medal of Honor that have been Hispanic than any other ethnic group, including whites, as a percentage of the population. You can, these are integrated people, and from World War II and all, and you can say what you will. It's almost like they're fighters who never take a step back. They just keep going forward because it's part of their culture. They don't back down. Well, they won more CMHs than anybody. Anyways, I got to run, Mike. Thanks for giving me so much time.
All right. Well, thank you for the phone call, and we're going to go to Fred in Iowa. And Fred, thank you for waiting so patiently. What's on your mind?
Yeah, very interesting conversation. I'm a separatist. I believe in separatism. What do you think of that?
Well, we all have a right to our opinions. That's what the First Amendment is all about. And I think it's possible for people to blend together in a society as long as they understand they have to assimilate to what that society is. And I think Theodore Roosevelt really made the point. He said, if you want to come here to the United States, you are welcome as long as you understand you have to obey U.S. law. We have one language here, and that's called English, that we use in public and for all governmental business. If you come here and behave yourself, you can prosper and you'll be welcome here. And I don't know that separatism is necessarily a healthy thing at this day and age in our country. We already went down that road in the years after the Civil War until Lyndon Johnson came along and pushed the Equal Rights Act through.
Okay, you're basing separatism on the law, is that correct?
Well, what are you basing separatism on?
Well, no, I asked you the question.
Well,
what do you think?
I'm basically looking at the time when separatism was the letter of the law in this country, and it wasn't a very healthy time.
When was that?
In the years between the Civil War and when Lyndon Johnson pushed through the Equal Rights Act.
Okay, so I assume that you believe in the law that our Constitution, our law, that we are a republic. We are not a democracy. And,
correct.
The law. Okay. I don't believe in the law of. That's why I'm a separatist. You want me to explain that?
No, I think we understand exactly what you're saying.
No, you don't. No, you don't. Allow me to explain that. Because I was going to see if you would say, or jump to the conclusion, that when I say that I'm a separatist, that you would assume or say that I'm a white supremacist. That's normally what people would think when you say that I'm a separatist. No,
Well, it
I am
hadn't
not a
occurred to
white.
me to say that. For one thing, I've never met you, and I don't know what color you are. You know, black, white, brown, peach, taupe, or mauve.
Well, I think possibly you do know or have an inkling or an idea. But the law, okay, the law that I believe in and follow, and why I'm a separatist, is because I believe in the law of God, the 10 Commandments. And it says, and the Bible says, to come out of her and be separate. Other words, come out of her is Babylon. And I don't subscribe to the laws of Babylon. So I'm a separatist. Can I hold?
Actually, no. The phone lines are really loaded up here, Fred. So thank you for the phone call. We're going to take more phone calls after these words from our sponsors.
Folks, this is very important information. What's to be said about CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. Our CBD is made from hemp and has 0.003 THC, which means this wonderful product won't get you high, no matter what amount you take. What does CBD do for the body? My hands are tied, but you can Google CBD benefits and be astounded. When you're finished reading, you'll want to log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. and purchase. Life is good when you feel good. People are tired of pain. People are asking for non-GMO organic products to help them with, you fill in the blank. Legal in 49 states, and again, our CBD is made from hemp. Ancient Life Oil is about helping people one by one by one. If you wonder how good the product is, the CEO takes it every day without miss. AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Have a great day.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Don't regret growing old. It's a privilege denied to many. Heart disease is taking our youth from us. Young people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond are dying needlessly. One of the hardest messages I've ever had to deliver is to convince people that something natural like Extendivite should be taken as a preventative measure. I'm sure you heard an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Extendivite is that ounce. Take Extendivite for 1 year and see what your doctor has to say and how much better you feel. Herbs take time to address the problem. It took years of life to have a problem. Give Extendivite 1 year to fix the problem. Don't wait until it's too late. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or visit us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Some are maxed out all their credit cards. Some are working 2 jobs and living in cars. Minimum wage won't pay for a roof, won't pay for a drink. If you gotta have proof, just try it yourself, Mr. CEO. See how far 5.15 an hour will go. Take a part-time job at one of your stores. I bet you can't make it here anymore.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. The phone lines are loaded up. I'm going to try and get through these calls as quickly as I can so I can get back to talking about the actual news and everything. Mark in Los Angeles, thank you for waiting so patiently. What's on your mind today?
Mike, can you hear me?
I hear you fine. You're on the air.
Oh, what a trip. First of all, I'm starstruck. I haven't talked to you in over a year. I think Trump had just been elected, and I called you from like the side of the freeway or somewhere. Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles. My house is walking distance from where Rodney King was beat up, and I listen to your show a day behind. I do the YouTube thing thanks to Bob Gibson or whatever his name is, and I never ever call, but I always want to, and but I listen to everybody, and I'll try to make this quick because, like I said, I never ever call, but I'm all over the place. A few days ago, one of your Florida callers mentioned something about black conservatives or blacks from California or something like that. And, I really wanted to chime in because I kind of fit that niche. But everybody, I think we underestimate the level of vulnerability that the lawlessness that's been going on the past few years, it puts us all in a great deal of danger. And by way of I think you call it doxing. Mike, you would know more about history than me, but every time I hear that Maxine Waters comment where she says, we need to confront them, we need to, all that stuff, it reminds me of the DJ that broadcasted in South Africa in '94, right before the Darfur thing.
Yeah.
I believe it was kind of like, I don't know if it was truth or not, but I believe some of the violence was sort of kicked up because of a broadcast from a popular DJ. Like he had kind of said something. I guess that was the green light for the Hutus to unleash their, their genocide.
If you're a broadcaster, you have to exercise restraint unless you could set something off by accident. And of course, the classic example is Orson Welles in the Mercury Theater of the Air's broadcast of the War of the Worlds, and just started riots in multiple cities.
Yes, that's why I'm constantly disturbed every time I look at that tape over and over again, because I truly, truly think that these people, and they know what they're doing. And back to me being black, it puts us, how do I say it? There's a mob mentality, and I'm not.
Okay, Mark, I got to put you on hold here. We got to take a break for station identification, and we'll be right back.
How healthy are your arteries? Deteriorating circulation has a number of early warning signs. High cholesterol, high blood pressure, fingers and or toes often go cold, arms and or legs often go to sleep, sharp diagonal crease in the earlobe, short walks cause cramping or pains in legs, memory is not as good as it used to be, ankles swell late in the day, chest pain after physical exercise or emotional stress. If you experience even one of these symptoms, your circulatory system is crying out for attention. Extendivite is a natural solution to help improve your overall health. Extendivite is not your average heart tonic. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or find us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network because you can handle the truth.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. We're talking with Mark in Los Angeles. We're talking about how easy it is for a careless or reckless broadcaster to stir up trouble. We're also talking about the behavior of many Democrats after the 2016 election who seem to be deliberately trying to incite a rebellion against Donald Trump. And fortunately, cooler heads prevailed. And while a broadcast can trigger already underlying anger and rage, it wasn't there to harvest in the case of Mad Maxine. Obviously, the fear of alien spacecraft was already in the minds of everybody who listened to that Orson Welles broadcast of War of the Worlds, and the same thing down in Africa. There are populations of countries around the world right now who have are just filled with anger and resentment, and one careless word into a microphone could set it all off.
Precisely. I'm going to make 3 points and I ask you to indulge me. I'll be really quick as I possibly can. It's so easy to put a label or a tag on someone and make them the enemy. And here in LA, if something really kicks off, or even the San Fernando Valley where I'm at, for the most part, I'm toast, because at that point, I don't care what your political affiliation is. All I care about is my block, the people that I've grown up around, or the people that I call my neighbors, and I don't want to see anybody harmed. But I fear what's going to happen. It's going to be too easy for black to just shoot brown, brown to shoot black, black to shoot white. It's going to be it's going to be just too easy for that mob mentality to just kind of escalate. I will call back next week. I really try to call once a week if you guys don't mind. I'm gonna get off of that and get on to something else really quick. Everyone's, the whole Trump thing. Where I'll be honest, Mike, I feel like I have a reason to be pissed at Trump as opposed to like a lot of people, because I think he should be aware of the risk that his supporters take just by supporting him. And I feel like in a lot of ways he's kind of letting them fail by the wayside. The Roger Stone thing, the Alex Jones thing, all of that. And I'm afraid that if it gets worse, I think like the black conservatives of this nation, when stuff gets worse, we're probably going to be like the Tutsis. And if we don't, protect ourselves, we can get it, man. I mean, because it's so easy to just, one little bit of critical thinking. Oh, you're a traitor to your race. You're Uncle Tom. You're this and that. Yeah, and it sucks. Okay, and I'll make this last point, and then I'll try to hold it till next week. This is something I really think is doable. It may not change a whole lot, but I really think there should be a law in terms of broadcasting, where every news show that comes on the air, there should be some kind of disclaimer that comes on beforehand with a tag, real similar to that Surgeon General tag that's on a pack of cigarettes. And it just basically states that case that you speak of. I think it's the Fox News case, either involving Monsanto or tobacco. Where basically it says
synthetic
we
bovine
can't fire
growth
you
hormone.
for Right. We can't fire you for not lying for us. That should be a disclaimer, like a Surgeon General warning in front of every newscast, especially CNN. You want to broadcast that stuff, put that disclaimer up beforehand. Let the people know, yeah, you're watching something where these people could legally lie to your face. You know, I have a lot more stuff, man, but I hope that's okay, and I hope you guys don't mind if I call you back next week or whenever. You know?
Next week will be just fine, and you made some good points. Thank you very much for the phone call, and we're going to switch over to David in Iceland. Aloha, David. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Okay, I think last couple of things we are on the moon or something. We had snow. It was great. You know, with my daughter, you know, because of Greta Thunberg. She was just like the other color. She thought there were going to be a snow again.
Yes.
And I have her skis and it's Race of Fire, Vakli. You can Google it up. It's great skis. And she really, really loves it. And when the first snow came, she was so grateful for that. She screamed. She was picking it out, and it's not happened in many years here in Iceland before Christmas. And she was so grateful because I told her the forecast. It was going to be snowing. And I told her because I went to her, I went with her to the hills and I told her just slide off, just run down the hills. I was thinking like Greta Thunberg or something. I was just like not like you or something or your other listeners. I thought, you know, everything is going crazy, you know. And I said, you know, there's gonna be snow. There's gonna be snowing. And the first snowfall, it was only a few snow cones, and she went crazy. And now it's been a little bit more, and she has her skis ready, and everything's ready. We live in Iceland, and I think that maybe someone, you know, over there has seen snow or something.
Well, I mean, we had snow here about 2 weeks ago, and they're expecting more snow this coming week. And I don't have skis anymore. I used to ski a lot when I was a kid. But you know, mostly these days I'm taking wildlife photos.
My daughter went crazy. She thought, you know, that the globe was going, you know, hot. You know, it was never going to snow again. She went so crazy. She was hugging me. She was, you know, it was crazy.
Well, I mean, you know, back in the 1990s, you know, Al Gore and his carbon Nazis out there were literally putting out the claim that snowfalls are a thing of the past. They were out there actively saying, you know,
they were telling the kids. They were telling, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I went skiing, you know, in the mountains, but it was not in town, but it was in the mountains.
Well, that's a good place to ski.
What's wrong with people? I don't understand. You need to explain
conditioned since childhood to believe what comes out of that TV screen. even if it directly is contradicted by what they see in front of their own eyes. I mean, every time that there's a major snowstorm, what we get from the global warming people is, well, maybe it's cold where you are, but trust us, everywhere else it's just roasty toasty.
It's just really cozy. It's really cozy. It's not snowing. It's not storm. It's not nothing. It's not Greta Thunberg. No, the Greta Thunberg is not here. Please, Mike, explain it to the people. Please, 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 please.
Well, we have explained it, and I will continue to do so. I'm hoping, we're looking at a forecast for a very heavy winter this year, and I'm hoping that people are going to look at that and realize that all this talk about global warming has been just another USDA choice government lie being thrown at them to trick them out of their money and their obedience.
I told my daughter there was going to be a few, snowflakes, and she was so glad. She was running up and down on me. She's 8 years old. It was crazy. She believes that, the globe is, going to hell or something. Please.
Well, she's probably being taught that in school. She's certainly getting it off the TV news and magazines and even the so-called educational channels.
Come back to her. I always have to come back to her and say, it's not happening. That's my problem. She went to me and she hugged me and said, whoa, we have snowflakes. It was only a few. It's crazy.
Well, I understand that, and I understand that, you're dealing with a daughter who's been brainwashed by the carbonazis, by the global warming cult, but you're handling it the best that you can. I expect we're going to see a lot more snow and ice before this winter is out. So, David, I'm going to thank you for the call. We're going to let you go here.
Thank you.
We're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. We're going to take one more phone call from Al in Canada, and then we're going to close the lines because I need to get back to talking about real news here. So, Al in Canada, what's on your mind?
And dragged around, Mike. You're being dragged around worse than one of those dog's playthings. You're all over the place here. I was really interested in the Donald Trump you said, but news you had. And Peter mentioned a bunch of things. I really like that guy. He keeps stealing my thunder because he brought up Japan with their ever shrinking population. And then the last caller, I think he was Dutch from the Netherlands, if I'm not mistaken. Let me ask you a question, Mike. I'm gonna say a word, and I want you to finish it off. All right? We.
The people.
Yes. Who does that include, Mike?
It includes all of the people all of the time who are citizens of the United States of America. And if you go back to the original Declaration of Independence, it says, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, and so forth. It's basically talking about, out of the multitude of individuals who were living in the colonies, of forging a single nation with a single population, and not divide people into being blacks and Hispanics and Asian and whatever, but recognizing we are all American people and we're all citizens of America. And to stop letting these politicians keep us divided and fighting against each other, because a politician is somebody, if they see the light at the end of the tunnel, they immediately build more tunnel, because that's how they stay in business.
And what's really sad is the people's taxes are being used against them at that point.
Yes, we're seeing a lot of that.
Right?
They're using our tax money to spy on us, to censor us, to basically control us.
Divide everyone up. Pronouns count. Right? Them, those, they. And then, of course, you get into all the other ones that are gender-based and everything else. So what they've actually done is divided everybody up, so many times. It's not we anymore. It can't be we. And anyone that says we, probably insane.
Well, basically, the government is afraid of the American people waking up one day and realizing that all these divisions on race, gender, transgender, all the rest of that stuff are
Religion.
all artificial constructs to keep us fearing each other, glaring at each other, and the government is terrified that one day we'll just wake up and realize how it was all a bunch of nonsense, and we'll unite together as a single American people, and we will actually start, opposing the source of all the problems in our lives. Which is not this minority group or that minority group or that gender group or whatever. It's all coming down from an incompetent oligarchical government that's misusing our tax money for endless wars, which it's not doing all that well at, certainly in Syria and Afghanistan. And the government will not be able to function if we're all basically on the same page as a people.
Yep. NATO is a store for American weapons. Pretty much end of story, because the United States of America contributes the most to NATO.
Yes.
And the only reason they're trying to get everybody to pull it all up to 2% at least, instead of just shutting it down, because it's the store for American manufacturing.
Yes. And that's why
Right?
NATO went on out
War.
and declared China to be a new adversary.
Great. Yeah, that's all we need. We just need more of those. We need more of those and them, right? Instead of we.
Yes.
Thanks a lot for your time, Mike. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot here. And as I said before, we're going to close the phone lines because I got to get back to telling some real news here. And apologies to those who wanted to call on in, but missed your chance here. Okay, over in the House, one of the Democrats there, Representative Jeff Van Drew, says he plans to vote against all the articles of impeachment. Now, they're making a real big deal about this, and I think the reason they are is that when it's all over and the House has impeached Donald Trump, they're going to point to this one guy and say, well, clearly this was not a partisan issue because we had one Democrat who voted against all of it. And so I think this guy is being set up to basically reassure us all that this process was above board and unbiased and not partisan. Certainly looking at Nancy Pelosi, especially her press conference, where she starts out saying, with love in our hearts, and, she's full of prayers and everything. And then she just blasts this order for asking an impertinent question. So the hoax is coming apart here. Now, Jonathan Turley apparently has been inundated with threatening messages after his testimony opposing the Trump impeachment. And apparently this began before he was even done. His home and his office were just inundated with these threatening messages and demands that he be fired from George Washington University for arguing that while a case to impeach can be made, it has not been made in this record. Certainly true there. I mean, there's no evidence there. The so-called witnesses aren't witnesses. None of them were actually present when Trump interacted with the president of Ukraine. It's all just basically opinion saying, well, if he did this, that's impeachable. But nobody can prove that he did anything. They don't really have a case. And this entire hearing It's all about selling the American people that Trump is really bad and shouldn't be allowed a second term in office, shouldn't be allowed to finish his first term in office. It's a sales pitch, like the Roomba vacuums. It doesn't say Democrat on it. It's not a real impeachment. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back.
The reviews for Extendivite are amazing. Here are some from Amazon. By Christine, great for heart palpitations. By Anne, before I started using this product, every afternoon my ankles and my hands would be swollen. That doesn't happen anymore. So if that part of their advertising is true, I have to assume that the rest of it is also. Not to mention that when I had my yearly blood test, only a few weeks after beginning to use this product, my cholesterol had dropped over 30 points. I'm going to continue to take it. By Croc, I love this product. It really works. By Brad, works great, thank you. Tell us your story. Get your Extendivite today. To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge 20, 30, 40, 50, if possible, 100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight. Women and children.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And I just got an email from somebody who had an answer for Steve Elkin's question. Can we put a face on the creation of Common Core? And it turns out to be an individual named David Coleman. Was the 9th president of the College Board, a supposed nonprofit organization best known for designing the SAT exam, the SAT subject test, and the advanced placement exams. And he is frequently described in the media as the architect of the Common Core State Standards Initiative. And that in and of itself was kind of a dumb idea. The idea that every place in America would have the same educational curriculum. Well, here in the middle of Indiana, there's a lot of emphasis put on farming and animal husbandry, skills that you wouldn't really need to have living in an urban environment like Los Angeles or New York. And that's why local control of the curriculum, I think, is something that is to be desired, because the individual communities know best what their kids should be learning. So anyway, now, as I mentioned earlier in the show, Rudolph Giuliani is over there in Ukraine. He's already found something like $5.3 billion of your money that was given to Ukraine that simply vanished into its corrupt mechanism. And here we have Nancy Pelosi wanting to impeach President Trump for not flinging more of your money at Ukraine fast enough. Shovel it into that fire as fast as you can here. So apparently, Ukraine has fired the prosecutor investigating Burisma and transferred all the cases over to a Soros-run NABU group linked to whistleblower Sierra Mele. So they're already in cover-up mode over there in Ukraine. Supposedly, Hunter Biden made $900,000 lobbying for Burisma. So if that stripper's lawyer who's trying to get child support is listening to this radio show, yeah, he's got money. Definitely has money. He tried to tell the judge that he's broke right now and then asked the judge to seal all of his financial records. Well, the records are now out here. Over in Tennessee, which is just that away, Tennessee businessmen made headlines over the summer for suing James Biden, the younger brother of former Vice President Joe Biden, for fraud, is now facing terror threats. And apparently the FBI is looking into an envelope sent to Michael Frey and his wife containing blood-stained foreign currency and a torture ticket. So our government is really descending into outright thuggery. Over in Great Britain, the Daily Mail has found links between Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein. The American media doesn't want to touch it. And we all remember the stories from when Clinton was running for office and then got into the White House. They had the bimbo eruptions squad that Hillary ran, because Bill Clinton was notorious for not being able to keep his fly zipped. 60 Minutes actually edited their show on their episode on Bill Clinton and Jennifer Flowers. They edited it to make Jennifer Flowers look like she was lying. And Clinton got up and walked to the nomination. So anyway, over at Judicial Watch, a little bit of good news. Judicial Watch is actually doing the job that Congress is supposed to be doing. Apparently, the court has rejected an FBI effort to keep secret records about FBI Clinton lawyer meeting on Russia. And District Judge James E. Boasberg denied a Justice Department effort to block the release of any communications between former FBI General Counsel James Baker and Michael Sussman, a Perkins Cole law partner and former DOJ attorney who reportedly met with Baker to share information targeting Donald Trump during the presidential campaign. And while at Perkins Cole, Sussman represented the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton's campaign during the time period when Perkins Cole secretly paid for the development of the anti-Trump dossier the Department of Justice subsequently used to obtain FISA warrants to spy on the Trump campaign. And the court specifically rejected the FBI's argument that it needed to protect the privacy of Hillary Clinton's lawyer. I'm certainly glad for that, Judge. The United Arab Emirates representative in Damascus, Abdul Hakim al-Naimi, has hailed the wise leadership of Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad and stressed that his country maintains strong ties with Syria. And he hoped that safety and security prevails across Syria under the wise leadership of al-Assad. Now, the UAE has been trying to regain ties with the Assad regime despite the numerous accusations of atrocities and abuses leveled at Syria by various human rights groups, which we now find out turn out they're fronts for intelligence operations. I mean, the OPCW has been thoroughly discredited. Okay, we're going to take another break, and we'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Hey, honey, I'm home. I grabbed the newspaper on the way home. Look at all the news today.
The newspaper? Don't you know that all you're going to get in the newspaper is propaganda, twisted news, and false information?
Honey, this is a national newspaper. It has to be true.
Ha! For some reason, a majority of the population believe anything the mainstream media tells them. The newspaper does not give out the important attention on what's happening to this country and news that affects our daily lives. Say, does that newspaper mention anything about the North American Union?
No, not that I can see.
I didn't think so. You need to go to www.newswithviews.com, where truth is more important than political correctness. That's www.newswithviews.com. Hey, don't throw that away. We can use that in the birdcage.
Okay, move over. Let me start reading newswithviews.com.
The truth? Read all about it at newswithviews.com. Newswithviews.com, where reality shatters illusion.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
It happens more often than we can imagine. In my case, I was sitting at home, and out of nowhere, I just started feeling uncomfortable. Then it got worse, and I started perspiring. I tried to ignore it, but I waited too long. The chest pain came as we were driving to the hospital emergency. I felt my life clock begin to tick. I barely survived. There was lots of damage done to my heart. What do I do now? I was lucky. I took a leap of faith and tried a 7-herb formula with hawthorn, garlic, cayenne, and more called Extendivite. Herbs have been used for thousands of years to keep us healthy. If you're not using Extendivite as a preventative supplement, maybe it's time to start. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. Visit us online at whatreallyhappened.com. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about the international news. And apparently, Oman's foreign minister, Yusuf bin Alawi, held talks with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in Damascus. And this is his second visit since the outbreak of the Syrian Revolution in 2011. His first visit was in October 2015. Now, bin Alawi is the only Gulf minister to visit Syria in the last 8 years. So it looks like Syria is starting to strengthen its ties to other countries in the Middle East as a way of bolstering itself against outside interference, meaning the U.S. and Israel. Speaking of Israel, apparently they have once again bombed so-called Iranian targets near Al-Bukamel, and the Israeli Air Force has carried out a new round of strikes on Iranian-linked targets near the Syrian-Iraq border. The airstrikes reportedly hit at the Al Hamadan airport north of the town of Al Bukamal. Now, pro-Israel sources claim that the strike destroyed the headquarters of the Iranian-backed militias, as well as ammunition and a weapons depot. The U.S. news agency, which is known for its close ties with Lebanon's Hezbollah and Iranian forces in Syria, also shared reports on Israeli airstrikes, but did not confirm them. Now, since the start of 2019, since the start of this year, the Israeli Air Force had conducted over a dozen of these strikes on supposed Iranian targets near Al Bukamal. And despite this, the town and facilities around it remain strong. And again, we only have Israel's word that any of these targets were linked to Iran. But the anti-Iran propaganda is really cranking up. More about that in a little bit. Again, back in Syria, the Syrian Arab army units eliminated terrorist groups which attempted to sneak into the army's points on the direction of Altin Istablat in the Sanjur area in Idlib province countryside. And Sana is reporting that army units clashed with terrorist groups and the clashes ended with the killing or injuring most of the terrorist group members and destroying their weapons while the others fled away. So now there's been a second whistleblower that came forward on the fact that the OPCW was doctoring their reports. Remember, the OPCW was held up as the unbiased, non-governmental agency that was providing honest reporting on the chemical and gas attacks in Syria, and we have since found out that their reports were being basically engineered to blame the Assad regime and to hide the hand of foreign-backed assets like the White Helmets. And so now there is this second whistleblower who basically said that the original report basically mentioned two sites where industrial gas cylinders were found in Douma. And of course, the official story is they were dropped from the air, but the OPCW concluded there was a higher probability that both cylinders were placed at the locations by hand. They were carried in and put down. That finding was completely suppressed in the final report. Oh, just trust us. You know, the Syrian Air Force went on in and just bombed all these women and children with gas. And again, the story never made any sense. You know, they're saying it's women and children who are being gassed to death to magnify the shock value, to magnify the emotional impact. Oh, it's women and it's children. How cruel could Assad be? And the real question is, would Assad be that stupid? You know, he was trying to hold off a U.S. intervention into his country. He had no reason to gas his own people. The United States did, to create the pretext for war. Remember Saddam's nuclear weapons? That big whopper that got us into Iraq? Now, as the OPCW is accused of false reporting, U.S. propaganda jumps to its help. And basically what this article is saying is that the corporate media is now out there trying to hold the OPCW's reputation up, that they're honest and honorable and unbiased. And, you know, these two whistleblowers are obviously disgruntled information, and we should just ignore the accusations that the information was being faked. All right, I mentioned this before earlier in the show. The West is ramping up the anti-Iran propaganda. U.S. and Western European officials are continuing a strategy of making very dubious allegations against Iran in an effort to try and justify continued military hostility, which is expected to involve a large U.S. military buildup in the region, which other countries in the region are distancing themselves from. They don't want to have anything to do with it. And one of the pieces of anti-Iran propaganda involves this small coastal boat that was seized by the U.S. Coast Guard and the Navy and was claimed to contain missile parts of Iranian origin being sent to the Houthis in Yemen. And at no time in the article does it say that there's any proof that these missile parts came from Iran, just linked to Iran. And when they use language like that, weasel wording, it's so that somewhere down the road when somebody says, well, those missile parts were actually U.S. made, they can say, well, we thought they were Iranian. And apparently the U.S. has released photos of the so-called Iranian missile parts headed to Yemen, and the missile parts don't contain any markings. Now, if you look at, for example, U.S. manufactured components for missiles and stuff, they got stamps all over them. Part numbers, where they were made, quality assurance numbers, and most of them are stamped U.S. property. These parts don't have that. They're squeaky clean. Now, France has adopted a resolution equating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. And it basically means that if you criticize Israel in France, you can go to jail for it because you're being anti-Semitic. Because Israel never does anything that people should criticize it for. I mean, that's just absurd. That's silly. There's nothing in Israel's history for the last 60 years that could be seen in a negative light by any sane person. By the way, it's now come on out that enabling the Israeli settlements in the West Bank has been U.S. policy for the last 4 decades. Now, ever since Trump came out with his comment about how the settlements in the West Bank, he doesn't see how they violate international law, which means Trump is being an idiot again. Israel's discretionary spending on settlements is now up 50%, and proving that no matter what you do for Israel, Israel always wants more. Netanyahu is now saying that Israel has a full right to annex the strategic Jordan Valley. That it's Israel's right to just go and steal other people's land. And this reeks of Lebensraum, was the Nazi rationale for going into the Sudetenland. And Israeli officials, some of whom are close to Netanyahu, are saying, this is a bad idea, okay? Because the Jordan Valley connects the West Bank to Jordan. And if Israel annexes the Jordan Valley, it basically would mean the rest of the Palestinian West Bank would never have a border with any other nation other than Israel. And military officials are warning the big problem would be with Jordan itself, and that the move would further damage Israel-Jordan ties, which are already under heavy strain, and might force the Jordanian government to take drastic steps. I'm sure that Jordan views the Jordanian valley as their territory. They probably would argue that Netanyahu does not, in fact, have a right to just move in and take it whenever he feels like it. We were talking before about Angela Merkel going to the Auschwitz-Birkenau Museum and how it might prove to be awkward, but she found a way around that. Merkel is going to give the Auschwitz-Birkenau Memorial 60 million euros to help conserve the site where the Nazis ran their largest death camp. This is a statement issued by the museum itself. There was this young Jewish man named David Cole, who basically went up to Auschwitz and talked to the people there on camera, and they all said, yeah, it's all a fiction. You know, we get cushy jobs out of this, and people feel sorry for us and they send us money. but it was a factory town. We had a caller who called in the other day saying, if Israel's goal was simply to exterminate the Jews, shoot them on the spot. Why spend money putting them on trains and driving them across Europe and putting them up in a camp that had swimming pools and exercise equipment, theaters, 2 orchestras, and spend all that money if you were just going to kill them anyway? Now, I toured Dachau near Munich when I was working in Munich, and the guide there said these were factories, and they made materiel for the German war effort, for the Wehrmacht. And so these highly skilled individuals were of value to Germany. And they were, I mean, slave labor is wrong under any circumstances, but the prisoners at Auschwitz were treated better than today's prisoners in the prison industrial complex here in this country. Meanwhile, over at the International Criminal Court, their prosecutor is once again acting as Israel's defense lawyer. Fatou Bensouda declared that she is standing by her 2015 decision not to open an investigation into Israel's attack on the Mavi Mavara flotilla, which 10 civilians got killed. She's simply out there saying, I refuse to open the case. The flotilla was bad, Israel is good, and that's all we need to think about. Now, there's been a lot of talk about this U.S.-Israel Mutual Defense Pact, and they're pushing hard on this. In fact, they may try and ramrod it through Congress before Congress recesses for Christmas a week from today on Friday the 13th. And basically, this U.S.-Israel Mutual Defense Pact would commit the United States to fighting on Israel's side in any war that Israel finds itself, including ones started by Israel. Basically, what this pact will do is turn every man and woman in uniform, in U.S. uniform, into a mercenary for rent to a foreign government. And so there are op-eds that are out there saying, this is a bad idea, say no to this Mutual Defense Pact. But Netanyahu and Pompeo are pushing forward with this defense pact. And Netanyahu is arguing that he should remain in power as prime minister because of this deal. That if this deal is actually accomplished, that should give him the bona fides to remain as Israel's prime minister and not have to go to court over the corruption and bribery charges. Now, the UN has officially asked Israel to leave the Golan Heights in Syria. And the UN General Assembly yesterday officially asked Israel to leave the occupied Syrian Golan Heights. Now, as a General Assembly resolution, it doesn't really carry much force. That has to go through the Security Council. But there was, in fact, a UN Security Council resolution that said the same thing. Israel has to leave the Golan Heights, and Israel, as usual, simply ignores the Security Council. Actually, what they did is they give them the finger. Now, backed by the Democrats, the U.S. House of Representatives are planning to vote on a resolution reaffirming the two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. And the resolution was introduced by Representatives Alan Lowenthal of California, Gary Connolly of Virginia, and Karen Bass also of California. And would basically require there to be a state of Israel and a state of Palestine. And I think we're probably going to see that resolution will fail because Israel wants it all. They don't want to share. They're driven by this religious desire, if you will, to have an Israel that matches the description given in the Old Testament or the Torah, from the Nile to the Euphrates. And if you look at the flag of Israel, that's what those two blue lines represent at the top and the bottom of the flag, the Nile and the Euphrates rivers. Palestine is right in the way there. Well, then, of course, they have to leave. They don't seem to understand. We're the voice of God. God says we're supposed to have all this land. Now, France's National Assembly on Tuesday passed a resolution conflating support for Palestinian equality with hatred of Jews, an initiative supported by the country's Israel lobby. We talked about it. Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. But apparently, most French lawmakers skipped the vote because they know how it's going to look on the next election. Israel is rapidly becoming a political liability. It wasn't all that long ago in this country that Friend of Israel, was an election winner. Now it can cost you. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be back after these few words.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you some from Amazon.com. It really does work like the review says it does. I cannot believe that after the first few days, I didn't feel as sluggish or clogged up. It has had a profound impact on my physical, emotional well-being. I'm skeptical as most people about products and their claims, and I never write reviews, but this is a wonderful product and I recommend it to everyone. Great product. It has brought my blood pressure from the mid-150s over the 80s to the mid-130s over mid-80s, along with diet and exercise in just the past couple of months. Excellent. Thank you, David. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
OMG! People are jumping on board to the Life Change Tea Regiment. Brew, steep, and drink for a gentle, taste-great cleanse. It's changing how they feel. See what everybody's talking about. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Life Change Tea aids in digestive slowdown and helps people get moving down a healthy path. We won't make claims. We'll just let you decide. Experience is much better than a commercial anyway. If you want results, log on to getthetea.com and purchase your Super Strength Cleansing Tea. You won't be disappointed. And if you're looking for some mind-body suggestions, go to YouTube and punch in the search bar Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. Put power into your health now. So, getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com for Super Strength Tea. And YouTube, Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now for valuable suggestions. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
Welcome to What Really Happened Radio.
Visit us online at whatreallyhappened.com. And now, set your eyes on the future and let's consider what really happened.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, over in Poland, there's a new law that has been passed, which could result in the handing over of 30% of all residential properties to Holocaust survivors and their descendants. So basically what happened is at the end of World War II, there were a lot of properties whose owners had disappeared, whether they were Poles or Jews, and it became the property of the state and it was sold. And so if this law is basically going to cause havoc because under this law, any Polish Jew or descendant of said Polish Jew can lay claim to property deemed heirless and sold after the war. Thus, all land that can be claimed to have been owned by Jews before 1939 will be transferred to the global Jewish diaspora. If this law is put into practice, approximately 30% of Warsaw homeowners will be forced to pay rent to random Jews claiming to be Holocaust survivors or the descendants in New York City and Tel Aviv. Now, this idea that the descendants of Holocaust survivors are entitled property of others, I think, is dangerous and destabilizing. And again, it goes along with Israel's idea of collective inherited guilt, that even those of us who had not been born during World War II share the guilt for the Holocaust. Well, again, here in the United States of America, we stopped the Nazis from completing whatever it was they were planning on doing. We had nothing to do with the supposed Holocaust. Neither did the Palestinians, for that matter. Once again, they have their hands out and say, Holocaust, Holocaust, give us money and property. Now, in the United States, the Campaign for Palestinian Rights is the target of a $90 million lawsuit that accuses the group of engaging in environmental terrorism. The legal action was brought forward by the Karen K. Smith L'Israel Jewish National Fund and 12 American citizens who live in Israel last month. Although they're identified as the KKL-JNF in Hebrew, the group is widely known as the Jewish National Fund. The complaint alleges that the USCPR has funneled money to the Boycott National Committee to be used for terrorist activities and that BNC is directly connected to Hamas, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and so forth and so on. What they're trying, this is a lawfare attack. Basically sue them out of existence. All righty. Apparently over 100 Democratic House members signed a letter that decried the Trump administration's policy shift on the West Bank settlements. There's music. All right. We've got to take a quick break for station identification. When we come on back, Rich Henderson will be our guest for hour number 3. We'll be right back.
I'm home. I grabbed a newspaper on the way home. Look at all the news today.
Don't you know that all you're going to get in the newspaper is propaganda, twisted news, and false information?
Honey, this is a national newspaper. It has to be true.
Ha! For some reason, the majority of the population believe anything the mainstream media tells them. The newspaper doesn't give out the important attention of what's happening to this country and news that affects our daily lives. Say, does that newspaper mention anything about the North American Union?
No, not that I can see.
I didn't think so. You need to go to www.newswithviews.com, where truth is more important than political correctness. That's www.newswithviews.com. Hey, don't throw that away. We can use that in the birdcage.
Okay, move over. Let me start reading newswithviews.com.
The truth? Read all about it at newswithviews.com. Newswithviews.com, where reality shatters illusion. You're listening to Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, the history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our program, hour number 3. And joining us on Skype is Mitchell Henderson. And Mitchell is an author. He's written a book called A Man Beyond His Mission, An Insider's Secret History of the Decay of American Society, Military, and Law Enforcement, which is covering a lot of ground, but then we're seeing the decay hit basically every aspect of our society. So, Mitch, thank you for spending time with us tonight.
You're welcome.
And tell us more about the book.
Well, I started writing the book. It was just going to be a book about how back in 1990, I infiltrated the Cali cartel. I went to Cali, I talked to the bosses, and I made a case that put the bosses in prison. In other words, it was the beginning of the end for the Cali cartel. So as I was writing the book, I thought, well, okay, just going to Colombia by myself, and when it was just total chaos and anarchy down there, even war between the cartels, whatnot, it was a very dangerous thing to do. It was almost insane to do. So I wanted to talk about my childhood, my police experience, my military experience, to show that, well, it was luck, but I define luck as where skill meets opportunity. So I had the opportunity, so the skill was developed. But then as I was writing about the police, the military, and other aspects of our society, there's just too much that I realized that the broad public has a false narrative of what the police do, what the military does. They tend to believe things that they're told by the military, the police, and stuff like that. And what I wanted to do is I ended up focusing on in my book with the lies that people are told. I mean, the American people have to wake up to just these fundamental things about their government and their society.
Well, I would certainly agree with that one. And of course, that's a lot of what RBN and what really happened is all about, is waking people up and getting them to start thinking critically about what is being presented to them on the TV. And I think the reason that there's a crackdown happening now on independent media is the government is now belatedly realizing that they have lost the ability to lie to the people with impunity. That they're not going to be believed when they say that Assad gassed his own people, or that Afghanistan was behind 9/11, and that the American people have become quite skeptical of everything that they see from the corporate media. And the government would like to take us all the way back to the golden years of the original Cold War, 1950, 1960, where the government would tell the TV networks what to say and the newspapers, and it would be published and people would read it and they would accept it and believe it as an absolute fact. But those days are gone and they're not coming back anytime soon.
No, they're not, and it's just there's fundamental things. For example, when we look on TV about the FBI, they give the impression like, well, the FBI would never lie. Well, I had a case where I arrested this prostitute. I was a prostitute detective in Tampa, and on the Vice Guard. So I had arrested this prostitute, and we went to court. Okay, and generally because of overload, the cop usually has to prosecute the case. So the prosecutor just announces it, and then the cop has to actually prosecute it. Well, these two FBI agents stood up with the prostitute and said, "Well, Your Honor, we're actually using her in an investigation right now, and it's critical that she be out of jail because in Tampa there was a 30-day mandatory jail sentence for prostitution." So the judge knew me well. I mean, he knew me for years. So the judge said, "Well, did you speak to the officer about this?" And what made him wonder that was because if they had talked to me, I could have just talked to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor would have dropped the case. It's that simple. But that didn't happen. So the two FBI agents said, "Yes, Your Honor, we cleared it with the officer." Well, the judge wasn't buying that, so he asked me on the record in court. He said, "Did these men talk to you?" I said, "Your Honor, they have not contacted me by phone, by paper, or in person. They never asked me anything about this." So, no, they did not ask. So the judge said, "Well, let's proceed." And the prostitute's name was Charlene Sandler, which is important to remember because if anybody ever wanted to check the story, that was all typed in by the court reporter about exactly what went on, and that's two FBI agents lying in court to a judge. So that this whole thing that well they would never lie. Well, yes, they would lie. They certainly will lie. I've seen them lie.
Well, one of the reasons that I'm doing what I'm doing now instead of something else is back in 1994 when I documented the FBI fraudulently manufacturing testimony. This was in the Vince Foster case. And the FBI, they're sort of America's version of the Gestapo. They're not about law enforcement or solving crimes. They're about covering things up. And if you read some of the books, like on TWA Flight 800, you find out that the FBI was actually out there trying to cover up what really happened to that aircraft. And so it's not a case of the FBI lying occasionally, it's what they do. And they're obviously brainwashed and conditioned into thinking that that really is the nature of the job. And that, movies like Silence of the Lambs and TV shows like the FBI or the FBI Story, they're there to convince us all that the FBI are a swell bunch of Joes, and they're not. They really aren't. I think a good example of the FBI's obsession with the media has to do with a movie called The FBI Story, which starred Jimmy Stewart, who'd actually become a brigadier in World War II. He was in the Air Force. And there's a famous director's name in the credit, but the fact is that J. Edgar Hoover was actually on that soundstage every single day saying how he wanted the movie made because he had a certain image he was crafting of the FBI agents that he wanted them to comply with. And even appears in the movie in a cameo from the backside at one point.
Well, I even had an experience with the FBI contacting me, trying to cover something up. I wrote you a little note about it. Back in 1991 and 92, I lived in Guatemala and I was working there. I was working for the government. And I had two separate deals going on, or operations going on. One was Israel had sold Guatemala some helicopters, American helicopters, which they weren't supposed to do because they were supposed to be the end user. Well, so Guatemala had the helicopters, but they didn't have the rockets for the rocket pods. So they approached me about getting the rocket pods. Now, to do this transaction, we were going to do it through the BCCI Bank and through the Central Bank of Guatemala. Okay. And who I was talking to was the the chairman of the Central Bank of Guatemala, Francisco Pira. The other operation was there were 4 DGI agents, Cuban intelligence agents, who had smuggled some cocaine into the United States and got $500,000 for operations. But then they wanted to take that $500,000 and buy more cocaine to get more money for operations. So U.S. Customs contacted me and asked me if I could hook them up with somebody who would purchase the cocaine. In this case, they weren't really interested in arresting the people in Guatemala. They wanted to arrest the Cuban DGI agents because with facing like a lifetime in prison, they might talk and give information to our intelligence services. So my contact for that was a Medellin cartel guy. He was actually the top Medellin cartel guy in Guatemala. And we became close friends. I went to his house for dinners, partied with him, I hung out with him. I mean, we were good friends and stuff. And we were going to sell roughly, I think it was 250 kilos to these Cubans for the $500,000. But the Treasury Department kept putting that off, saying, well, you can't allow that money to leave the country. And then just before I was going to go down with the tape, and tape Francisco Pira making the deal on the rocket pods, Alan Simpson stood up before Congress and the Senate and accused Francisco Pira of murdering 2 Americans or having 2 Americans murdered in Guatemala. So when I went to talk to him, of course, he said, well, in view of what your senator just said, I don't think it's a good idea for us to try to do anything right now because we'll be under scrutiny. So a U.S. senator actually killed the operation, okay? And it was illegal for Guatemala to buy those rockets, is why it was all under the table. So flash forward, this was like 1991, 92. So flash forward to 96. Bill Clinton is running for president again. So my phone number and how to get in touch with me was super secret. Just very few people knew. But I got a call from the FBI, and the FBI asked me, well, what do you know about the Clintons in Mena, Arkansas? And I said, well, I just know the conspiracy theories that you read in the newspaper and stuff like that, you know. And they said, you don't have, she says, how can you not have firsthand information? Weren't you like good friends with the Medellin cartel? And I said, yes. Didn't you deal with the CCI Bank? And I said, yes. And I said, but you know, cartels aren't stupid. If you're not involved in a particular operation, they know they have operational security. They don't just tell you everything that they're doing, you know. So I said, I have no firsthand information about the Clintons and Mena, Arkansas. And furthermore, I noticed that everybody who does ends up dead.
Yes.
So the FBI agent laughed. And I said, you do know that up until this point, I thought that was all just wild conspiracy theory. But your phone call has just confirmed to me that it's all true. And he laughed again and said, yes, but you have no personal direct information of that. And this phone call never happened, was his response. So the FBI was busy running around. They were busy running around trying to control what they call bimbo eruptions, you know, people that Bill had slept with. And they were calling me to make sure that I wouldn't come out of the blue with something about Mena, Arkansas, you know, which I don't know why they were so concerned with that, because from 92 to 96, I hadn't said a word to anybody. So, you know, so yes, they cover up for people. That's their job. They're the political police, like the KGB of America.
Yeah, they certainly are. And what are some of the other areas in our society where you're seeing decline?
Well, I see it in the military. It's like we have lost our military leadership. And I'm a retired Army officer, so I actually talk to lots of fairly high-ranking military officers now. Plus, I had 2 sons in the Army. I used to go visit them, and they just got out 2 weeks ago. So, you know, even though I spent 28 years in the Army, I got out in '99. And already in '92, I started seeing the decline of leadership, and now there's like none. For example, if you want, I talked to this Navy captain who told me that I said, well, you're very young. You just got 20 years in. Are you going for a general or admiral? And he said, well, no. He says, to be an admiral, you have to be a cultural Marxist and you have to be politically correct. And I just can't stomach that. So I'm when my 20s up, I'm getting out, because to get a star, you have to become one of these brainwashed people that parrots the party line and stuff.
Yes.
Also, just
like
general
the old
leadership.
Soviet Union.
Exactly, like political commissars and stuff. And my sons, 8 years in the Army, they never even knew who their platoon leader was. Where's the leadership? You know, when I was a platoon leader, I had to be intimately involved. As an example, like as the platoon leader, if one of my men failed the PT test or got into trouble, got arrested or something, it wasn't his fault. It was my fault. I was responsible. So leadership is about, well, the old style leadership was about you being responsible for everything that happens to your men, and you have to take care of your men. Okay. The new leadership style, as my sons say it, is you make rank by stabbing people in the back and throwing them under the bus. Okay, so that destroys leadership. Is such a key component to military effectiveness. If you don't have good leadership, your military is worthless without good leadership. So I saw that going away. For example, I was with this movement of officers in like the 1986, 87, 88, where we tried to really professionalize the U.S. Army. We were all like from the Vietnam times and stuff, and we wanted to make a very professional modern army with good hard training and stuff, and develop good leadership. Well, we were succeeding at doing that quite well, but this involved a lot of things that if I did those things now, I would go to jail. An example I give in the book is when I was in officer candidate school, we had this round robin, and I had to take these guys out on a long range reconnaissance patrol. So typically this is going way behind enemy lines to get information. You're not going there to fight the enemy. You're just, you want the enemy to not know that you've ever been there, because you're just collecting information. Okay. So you want to get in and get out without being detected. So what they did is they had talked to one of the guys in my patrol and told him, hey, when you get out there into enemy territory, you need to refuse to go any further and see what the lieutenant does, you know. So he refused, and I said, well, you have to come with us, because if you go back, you could be captured and you could get us all killed, you know, and the mission will fail. And I said, so you have to come with us, you know. And he would not listen to reason. So I told my other guys, I say, take the gun away from him, take his weapons away from him. And this infantry major, came up, and he was the one grading me, and he said, okay, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to dig a hole deep enough to put his body in, so that animals can't dig him up and no odors will come out, so that the enemy can't detect us. I'm going to take my bayonet and shove it through his throat and break his C-spine and just bury him out there with his weapons and gear, deep underground where nobody will be able to detect him. And then we'll cover the area up good. And he says, well, what are you going to report about the guy when you get back? And I said, well, I'm going to say that, and as will all the men attest to, that he fought bravely, defending our lives, and saved our lives, to make sure that his mom and dad gets a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart for their son, instead of finding out that their son was a coward. Okay, because that's taking care of your troops. So this major, he gave me an A. He said, that's the correct solution. You're doing the right thing. Okay, well, flash forward to Afghanistan, and Lieutenant Michael Murphy, okay, they get to see, if you see the movie Lone Survivor, these two Afghan civilians find them And Michael Murphy decides, oh, yeah, well, we can't kill him. So he compromises the mission based on 2 civilians, okay? And then he basically gets a helicopter load of people killed and all his troops killed except for one, the lone survivor. So he got, like, I think 18 people killed, and he failed in his mission. And he got a Medal of Honor, okay? Well, if
That's
I
going to
did
send
what
a mixed message. Okay, Mitch, we got to take a small break for commercials. Don't hang up. I'm going to come right back to you, and we'll pick up here at the decline and decay of America's military. So we'll be right back.
Many people tell us about their experience with Extendivite. Just listen to what Glenn has to say.
Prior to taking it, I had diabetic neuropathy. The Extendivite reduced that significantly. Acid reflux was reduced. I had athlete's foot, very severe. Trimmed that down to about 75%. Dandruff, almost completely gone. I had occipital neuralgia at the base of my skull. I was having migraines, reduced by about 90%. Heart palpitations, my heart would kind of stall out. I would skip a beat. Very uncomfortable. And when walking from downstairs going to sleep, by the time I got to the bedroom, which is just one flight of stairs, my heart was pounding, coming out of my chest. My vision was blurry. This completely solved that problem. Great product. Thanks.
Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge $20, $30, $40, $50, if possible, $100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
Some are maxed out all their credit cards. Some are working 2 jobs and living in cars. Minimum wage won't pay for a roof, won't pay for a drink. If you gotta have proof, just try it yourself, Mr. CEO. See how far 5.15 an hour will go. Take a part-time job at one of your stores. I bet you can't make it here anymore.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Mitchell Henderson, who's had a very varied and interesting career. And we were talking about the decline of the U.S. military. And I was going to ask you before you brought it up yourself, if this decline in leadership explains why, despite having so many weapons and equipment and so forth, why we've performed so poorly in places like Afghanistan and Syria.
Well, yes, it is. It's because like I was saying, what I had been trained, the way I had been trained, if I did that now, I would go to prison for the rest of my life. Okay, whereas back in 1986, that was the acceptable thing to do. So you had mentioned lawfare a little bit earlier in the program. Well, what they're doing is they're imposing laws on warfare such that you actually can't win a war anymore. The days of total war, like in World War II, are long gone. You can't. They've made laws restricting everything you can do. So Michael Murphy actually did what he was trained to do, which was diametrically opposite of what I was trained to do just 20 years before, or somewhere in the area of 20 years before. So I'll give you another example that it explains this. So a police buddy of mine, he took a job in Afghanistan with the 10th Mountain Division as he was a detective, so he was there to help them with human intelligence, to help the soldiers develop informants and so forth to gather intelligence. Well, there were two FOBs 7 miles apart. Well, back in my day, you would never leave your post the same route twice in a row, and you would certainly never return to the same place to the post by the same route, because it sets you up for an ambush. It's just a no go do. But what happened is in Afghanistan, it's like you have to go on the road, because if you drive off the road with your tracked vehicles, you're going to destroy the environment. Okay. And the environment is more important than an American soldier's life. Okay. So he suggested, well, why don't we put up a fake camera on a big tower right in the middle between the two bases, and then put barbed wire down the middle around the base of the tower, and then set up a sniper on the hill so that when the Taliban come to disassemble the camera and take everything away, the sniper can take them out, and then it'll save lives. So the battalion commander at the 10th Mountain Division, he actually liked the idea. He thought it was innovative. So he says, well, I have to run it by the JAG officer. Well, a female JAG officer told him, no, you have to put real cameras out there, and if you see somebody coming, you have to call the Afghan National Police. Well, the Afghan National Police will not go out on the road at night. They're not going to do that ever. Okay, so it just killed the whole thing, and then more people had to lose arms and legs because of this JAG officer. Now, when I heard that, I called a cousin of mine, and this cousin, he had gone to Vietnam, and he was an infantryman, but he was wounded in action, sent back to the United States. So he got his combat infantryman badge, his Purple Heart, and everything. Then he went to Yale and went to Yale Law School and went back in the Army as a JAG officer. Okay, so I called him and I said, hey, what's the deal with this? Now picture this. My cousin is actually a very progressive Democrat. Okay, he's not a conservative guy, but he is a lawyer, and he had been an infantryman. And he said, well, Mitchell, he said, that's horrible. He says, JAG officers are given no instruction whatsoever about military tactics, strategy, or anything like that. Why in God's name are they asking JAG officers to approve tactical operational plans? They know nothing about it. And so there's a guy who knew both sides, and he's like, no, they should not be asking JAG officers to approve operations. That is a problem with our military too. Then if you look at Iraq during the war, for every 10 troops killed in action, one went to prison, basically for killing an enemy. This causes that same thing that they did like after Baltimore. The soldiers are going to be less aggressive because, well, they don't want to get accused of murdering an enemy. I mean, it'll ruin their life and their career. They'll go to prison. So that's why I say we've been in Afghanistan for 18 years fighting an enemy that is illiterate peasant farmers that have no superpower support whatsoever. We have the most modern army in the world, and we have not been able to beat them in 18 years.
Well, it's a tough piece of terrain. I mean,
pathetic.
the last commander to conquer all of Afghanistan and hang on to it was Alexander the Great, and he only kept it for 3 years. Now, I know our commercials are a little lopsided here. We have to take another break, and we'll come on back. And then I'm going to ask you for some prognostication about our current war situation. We'll be right back.
Okay.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
When your doctor tells you you have bad cholesterol or blockages in the arteries, what do? When diet and exercise is not enough, we try medications and hope for the best. For the last 2 decades, I have been telling people about a natural method to help solve these problems and more. Extendovite can help maintain cardiovascular health and lower blood lipid levels in adults. The 7 herbs in Extendovite are known to work together synergistically to get the results we hope for. There are many testimonials on Extendovite's effect on circulatory-related ailments. Get Extendovite today to start your journey back to a healthier life. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or see us on amazon.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
Hey, honey, I'm home. I grabbed the newspaper on the way home. Look at all the news today.
The newspaper? Don't you know that all you're going to get in the newspaper is propaganda, twisted news, and false information?
Honey, this is a national newspaper. It has to be true.
Ha! For some reason, a majority of the population believe anything the mainstream media tells them. The newspaper does not give out the important attention on what's happening to this country and news that affects our daily lives. Say, does that newspaper mention anything about the North American Union?
No, not that I can see.
I didn't think so. You need to go to www.newswithviews.com, where truth is more important than political correctness. That's www.newswithviews.com. Hey, don't throw that away. We can use that in the birdcage.
Okay, move over. Let me start reading newswithviews.com.
The truth? Read all about it at newswithviews.com. Newswithviews.com, where reality shatters illusion.
What this country is coming to, I sure would like to know. If they don't do something by and by, the rich will live and the poor will die. Doggone, the panic is on. Can't get no way, can't draw no pay. Unemployment.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Mitchell Henderson, author, adventurer, former undercover police officer, all kinds of interesting things. You've had a very, very colorful life. Well, you're telling me about all the Charlie Foxtrots that were happening in Afghanistan. And if you've been reading the news recently, you'll understand there have been these strange accidents like the ramming of commercial vessels with Arleigh Burke destroyers, which happened in the Pacific. And I think just this week they had a Navy ship ram a Coast Guard vessel up by Alaska. And it all seems to come down to failures of the chain of command and inadequate training of the people who are being put in charge of these billion-dollar assets here. And so with that in mind, if we got into a conventional war with Russia or China, what do you see as the likely outcome?
Well, first, let me make a general statement to defeat a false narrative. We always hear how we have the best military in the world. We spend more than the next 12 countries. Well, the fact is, the United States does not have the biggest military in the world. We only have 14 combat divisions, of which only 4 are ready to go at any time. Russia has 70 combat divisions, and China has 38 combat divisions. Okay, so they're much bigger than us. And best, I would say that a soldier in the army of Chad in Central Africa is probably better than our soldiers because they've been at war since the 1960s, and they're very professional in how they fight. They're used to fighting. Okay, we just simply are not. And one of the things that I criticized was how we rely so much on electronics. Okay, and this was a big gift to Silicon Valley, trillions of dollars into making everything in our military electronic. Well, the fact is I went to a communication security course back in 1986, and I can't get into details of what they taught me, but basically they taught me that all our communications will be gone within the first 60 seconds of a war starting with a major power like Russia or China. Okay, that means everything we've invested in becomes worthless in 60 seconds. Like a company of soldiers is 200 troops. A brigade is like 4,000 troops. So an American combat division has one company of electronic warfare people, and a Russian division has a brigade or 4,000 people doing electronic warfare. So all of our electronic abilities will evaporate. Okay, and we're back at visual communications, basically. So we cannot beat them. Okay, well, if we can't beat some peasant farmers, how do you think we're going to possibly beat a well-trained Chinese or Russian army? We can't do it.
Well, I tend to agree with that analysis here. We actually have a caller on the line who's got a question. Tom in Florida, do you have a question for our guest, Mitchell Henderson?
Yeah, I do have a guess, but I want to clear something about yesterday. But yeah, Michael, I do have a question. I remember Kim Jong-un from North Korea was talking about he could use this one EMP and put it over the Midwest, and he could starve the whole world out. Because the United States does feed China, basically, and Russia, believe it or not. And EMP, electric impulse weapon, probably. I mean, if the United States were to put one over in China or even Russia, for that matter, it's all about food, isn't it? I believe, and Kim Jong-un saying I can blast one in the Midwest there and burst EMP, and that would be the end as far as the food distribution. You'd starve billions of people because of the weaponry of, the food production. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, yes, it is correct in that EMP, they predict, a conservative prediction is that if a EMP weapon was set loose over the middle of the United States, within 1 year, 90% of Americans would be dead. Okay.
Well, what about the Russians and Chinese?
Well, let me get to that. So in America, we have big box stores, okay, and all the food gets distributed from Chicago, okay, and that takes communications, stuff like that to do, okay. Well, we've isolated the Russian economy such that they're prepared for that. They've planned for that. They're ready for it. We've made no plans whatsoever for that. The Chinese, they don't have the big box stores either. They still will be able to get food to the cities. It'll be the United States, because of our dependence on electronic technology, it's us that will suffer from it. They won't have the same problem.
Yes, I believe I saw something on. I saw an interesting thing about Australia today. About in the center of Australia, they have like an underground city. Did you hear about that?
No, I haven't heard about that.
Yeah, I saw that in one of the networks, and they're talking about in Australia. And I guess Australia, they work on I don't know what kind of weapons they have, but I'm sure Australia's got a pretty good little power punch itself. People don't talk about that, but Australia is no flimsy country, believe it or not. One thing, Michael, did you see what happened in Pensacola today?
Yes, I did. I'm just, one day after the similar shooting at Pearl Harbor, and both of them just before Pearl Harbor Day, which is tomorrow. And they're saying that the shooter in Pensacola was a Saudi trainee pilot. And, I'm trying to figure out what happened with that one.
Well, they say his name was Mohammed. And they had another thing that's interesting. Yesterday, we were talking about Mohammed is the 10th most popular name in the United States right now. And in England, it's number 1. So in England, Mohammed is the number 1 name. And in the United States, it's number 10 on the list. And supposedly the shooter in Pensacola's name was Mohammed. So they show on Breitbart, by the way. Getting back to one more thing, Michael, and your guest is a great guest. A lot of knowledge. One more thing I don't want to clear up real quick, and I'll let you get off the phone. Yesterday, you had 2 callers called in. Supposedly, you enforced the rule, and I haven't called in. One guy's called in 4 or 5 times since you put that rule in effect. I have not to do that because I understand you told me that's not allowed. But this one guy keeps calling in 4 or 5 times. The other guy called in 2 times. And, all these guys are saying it's a 1 call per day, but these guys keep calling in 2, 3 times sometimes.
Yeah, well,
at least 2
as
times,
of today, we're reinforcing that rule: 1 call per caller per day. And the only reason that we put you through to Mitch is that this is the first time you've called today.
Yes, and thank you, Michael. One more thing. I want to clear up one thing about yesterday with the Germans and the Russians. The only reason the Russians were able to take out the Germans because they were 1 mile outside of Moscow, Michael, in 1943. They were 1 mile away. They were almost inside Moscow, the Germans. The reason they lost that battle, other than the weather, is because the United States was supporting Russia. You could bring a piece of fresh cake into Russia, onto the Russian front. The Russians had cake that was a day old from the United States, where the Germans didn't have that. Like Dustin was correct. The supply line was cut off. They literally froze to death, the Germans. But the United States, if it wasn't for the United States helping the Russians take on the Germans at that time frame, no way would they have beat the German army. There's no way, because they were bringing in fresh cake, dessert, food, and all that to the Russians. The Russians had the United States backing them up at that time frame. The Germans did not. So that's the reason why. And the other guy made a smart comment about Curtis LeMay. Well, Curtis LeMay, the guy was saying he would have got us into World War III. I don't think so. If they would have listened to Curtis LeMay, the situation in Cuba probably would not have happened. And I tell you right now, at that time, Kennedy had the better chance of taking on the Russians than the Russians had attacking us. Am I right about that, Michael?
You're right about that, except as looking back on it, the U.S. didn't really have an interest in taking on the Russians, and the Soviet Union didn't really have an interest in taking us on either. It was all just a lot of hype being put into the news media to convince the American people that it was okay to keep pouring money into weapons development.
And actually, absolutely correct. And what I was trying to tell that one caller yesterday is talking about how great Stalin was. That guy was saying Stalin's he's the reason why he was a great guy or whatever. How he pointed that out to your audience. No, he was not a good guy. He was horrible. And as far as what's going on with Cuba, Curtis LeMay told Kennedy, "Hey, listen, I can take care of this in 12 hours. The whole thing will be over with, and we ain't gonna have no Russians bringing in nuclear warheads into Cuba." And that's what. And if they would have listened to LeMay, this would never happen. And by the way, we did basically. Really, the call you have, your guest on right now, I'd like to ask him about what he thought about Curtis LeMay's tactics to knock out the cities of Germany. And that's, I guess, the only way you're going to beat Germany at that time. I guess that was what I was reading, that about LeMay is the only way you could took on the Germans is what LeMay did. Otherwise, they would have probably won the war. Or it would have been a stalemate for sure.
Well,
Curtis LeMay
actually had made a remark before the Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombings that we absolutely had to win the war because he would be tried as a war criminal if we did not win. By the way, my first name Mitchell is named after Billy Mitchell, and my middle name Curtis is named after Curtis LeMay. My mother's family had an Air Force officer. The first officer in her family was an Air Force officer, so she named me after people who developed air power.
Well, sir, that's awesome. Very awesome to speak with you, and I thank you for taking my call, Michael. And like I said, I just wanted to clear that up. And I believe yesterday that caller was talking how great Franklin Delano Roosevelt was and how great Stalin was. I think that maybe Teddy Roosevelt gave us the Great White Fleet, but I don't know about FDR so much, but definitely not Stalin. So I don't know where that guy was coming from. And as far as the other guy saying that, the Germans got crushed by the Russians, the only reason the Russians were able to beat the Germans, other than the weather, okay, which was the coldest winter year in like 50 years. Other than that, the fact of the matter is the United States was pumping in all this food and all this weaponry into Russia. If the United States was not back in Russia during that time, there's no way the Russians would have beat the Germans. Yes or no, Michael?
I think you're oversimplifying the situation there. I think, it's a matter of record how bravely the Soviets fought. And as far as Stalin is concerned, or for that matter, FDR, all of our leaders are portrayed as either totally good or totally evil. The reality is they're a blend of both. Stalin did some pretty stupid things during his time in office, like Lysenkoism. FDR did some pretty stupid things, which is why the bankers tried a coup against him, led by Major General Smedley Butler. And then on the other hand, they did some really good things. So I think we need to avoid oversimplifying. Anyway, Tom, we're going to let you go.
One more thing, Patton, Michael, don't forget Patton. Patton was very major in that war. George Patton was really one of the major reasons we won that war. With his spiritual, I don't care if you think he's crazy, Patton was absolutely right how that war had to be conducted. And you know that. And Patton was right. We should have turned and went right into Russia. Yes or no?
I would agree with those who criticize Patton for that. It was time to basically crank everything down here because the Russians were a lot closer to a nuclear weapon than we thought. I mean, when FDR told Stalin about it, Stalin acted like he already knew that we had that weapon. And so that meant that the Soviet Union was already well on their way to producing one. Now, obviously, the treason committed by the Rosenbergs helped speed their way along the path, but I think it would have been a mistake to basically launch a second war against the Soviet Union. So anyway,
well, Michael,
Tom, okay, Tom, you can't,
MacArthur
Tom,
said one thing.
Tom, you can't keep on saying one more thing, one more thing, one more thing. Thank you for the phone call. We're running out of time. We're going to take another phone call, and then we're going to let Mitch have the rest of the show to talk about what he's going to talk about. So Chance in West Virginia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. Hello, Mr. Henderson. I believe I heard you, Mr. Henderson, on Jeff Rent's program 2 or 3 times recently. Yes, sir. You were very informative. I'd like to know your opinion on something, Mr. Henderson. Considering how bleak and dismal the FBI has become, what do you see for the future of that organization? That's number one. And number two, in your best guesstimate, what percentage of the people in the FBI would you say are sincere in their job and not corrupted, if you had to give an estimate today?
Well, I would give an estimate of 5%. I always develop this diamond theory of any organization where you have 5% of people of high integrity and honor that are the glue that holds the organization together. Then at the bottom of the diamond, you have 5% of totally corrupt people. And then the fat part of the diamond are people who are there just collecting a paycheck. They're neither good nor bad.
Right.
I think the FBI needs to be disbanded. It is a threat to our democracy. Is what it is.
So do you see that in the future of that organization, Mr. Henderson? Do you believe that might occur?
Well, maybe if Trump gets elected again, he can go ahead and clean house, and replace it with just a federal investigative service that only investigates federal crimes and doesn't get involved in politics and stuff. We also need to get rid of the CIA because
I agree.
They're the ones who keep us in perpetual wars. I mean, they run our foreign policy. They even are trying to overthrow our president right now. We need to dissolve the CIA. We don't need them,
But I don't know if I have confidence in President Trump carrying that particular ordeal out. Well, nevertheless, thank you very much, Mr. Henderson, and thank you, Michael, for taking my call.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to close the lines again because we're running out of time here, and I want to give Mr. Henderson a few moments of time. Now, I agree with your comment about the CIA. They go around the world starting up all kinds of messes that ordinary men and women in uniform are expected to go and clean up here. But with regard to Trump taking on the CIA, we need to remember what happened to the last president who threatened to basically shatter the FBI into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the wind. And he died November 22nd, 1963 in Dallas, Texas. So
yes, he did.
It's a formidable foe, to say the least.
Oh, yes. They're the ones who run our foreign policy and stuff. An interesting thing is back in 1977, the Jimmy Carter broke up. He fired like 2,900 CIA agents, including George H.W. Bush. Okay.
Yeah.
At that time, they called themselves the B Team. And what I find so interesting is I watched, this was several months ago, I was watching on a foreign website, an interview of the Iranian foreign minister. And they asked the Iranian foreign minister, they said, well, do you think Trump wants a war with Iran? And it's interesting, but the foreign minister says, no, Trump doesn't want a war with us, but the B Team absolutely wants a war with us. And Russia came up and said the same thing. In the same time frame, they said, well, we don't think that Trump wants a war with Russia, but the B Team absolutely wants a war with Russia. So what this B Team started in 1977. So what they did and how the Iranians know about the B Team was when the Shah was overthrown and they took the hostages. Actually, the Ayatollah was going to let the hostages go because of diplomatic law and immunity and all that kind of stuff. But George Bush flew over to Iran with, I think, $24 million and bribed the Ayatollah to keep the Americans prisoner until the next president was elected and to let them go the moment the next president was sworn into office because he wanted to defeat Jimmy Carter. Okay. So sure enough, when he became president, when Reagan became president, he asked the Iranians to let him go, and the Iranians just let him go. Now, he had also told the Iranians, well, we wouldn't interfere with you in the future. Okay, well, as soon as they got elected, Donald Rumsfeld flew to Iraq and talked Saddam Hussein into start invading Iran and starting the 1980 to 1988 Iran-Iraq war. Okay. So this B Team goes further. It's like, so April Glaspie was the American ambassador to Saddam, and she told Saddam, well, if you invade Kuwait, to get back some money from all the expenditures, we don't care about that. And as soon as Saddam invaded Kuwait, well, George Bush came out and created the New World Order to, unify the world and taking Saddam out. So it's like we stabbed the Iranians in the back, we stabbed Saddam in the back, okay? And then it goes further. So George Bush sends troops to Somalia to feed people, okay, because they're starving, okay? Then Clinton takes over as president, but the UN person ahead of the aid there was April Glaspie, the same one who is the ambassador to Iraq, and she talked him into turning, instead of a humanitarian mission, of going after Mohammed Farah Aidid. Okay, now Aidid, you have to remember, was not a hardcore anti-American guy. His son was in the Marine Corps, the U.S. Marine Corps. Okay, so he didn't have really anti-American sympathies so much. But April Glaspie, she talked them into mission creep and going after him. So these people, they start wars, regime change wars of any kind. You know, it's what the CIA does. They want to keep us in a perpetual state of war. And this goes back to they were created by the National Security Act in 1957. And then Eisenhower in 1960 warned us against the military-industrial complex. Okay, and the CIA is the military-industrial complex's point man. They're the ones who get all the wars going for us and stuff. Okay, this causes disasters. All the refugee crises, everything we have, is all because of wars that they start. And those wars are not necessarily in our best interests.
We're running out of time here. We're almost at the end of the program. And so I'd like you to share with our listeners where they can get your book. If you have your own website, we need the URL for that. And just basically anything else that you want our listeners to know about you before we sign off.
Okay, well, my book is called A Man Beyond His Mission, and it's available on Amazon.com. As far as contacting me, in view of what I did in Cali, Colombia back in 1990, I actually kind of stay away from social media and stuff so that I can't be easily found.
That's probably a very, very smart idea. I wish I'd had the same approach back in 1994 when I stumbled over that evidence about Vince Foster. My life would have been so much better off without it. I mean, you know, anyway, you've had a very interesting career. It sounds like you'd give Bo Gritz a run for his money in terms of your life experience. And just out of curiosity, what are you doing today to occupy your time?
Today, well, actually, I have a cabin up in the mountains. It's sort of off the grid. I was down at the hardware store buying stuff for the cabin. I've got to go hook up all my solar energy this week because I'm off grid. There's no power lines that come by.
Yeah, you were mentioning that. No cell service, no telephone. It sounds kind of like a little piece of heaven on earth.
It is heaven. There's no trouble. I don't have to hear about anything up there. I still do a lot of research. I read maybe 3 to 5 nonfiction books a week. When I come into town, I look on the news, but I look at the news of other countries. Like if something happens in Syria, I look at the Sana news, Hurriyet in Turkey, the Rajami Kurd news, the Jerusalem Post. I mean, I'll look at all the news of the countries around there to get the real story, because none of this stuff is ever reported. And when I look at the impeachment hearings and the Mueller report, it's all a distraction.
It really, really is. All right. Well, listen, there's the music. It's time for our show to end. Mitchell, thank you for spending the last hour with us. We're going to have you back again in the future, talking about your very colorful background. And so, again, thank you for spending time with us today. And I'm going to ask our listeners to stay tuned for John Stadtmiller's program. Please spread the word of RBN and What Really Happened far and wide. Please support RBN and whatreallyhappened.com. We'll be back on Monday. Aloha, America.